Hey guys, I hope it's going well. Luker here once again. Today I'm going to be talking about the decks that I think are best for ladder. I think there is a little bit of a disconnect from the truth in what people think are actually the best decks for ladder. I mean, I know a lot of people, like the top two decks are pretty obvious, right? Everyone knows the best two decks are Pirate Warrior and Pirate Shaman. But aside from that, people don't seem to understand what decks are best for ladder, and I want to make sure that you guys have a definitive guide on how to climb to Legend. Obviously, some of you might want to be playing the best decks in the game, and I wouldn't recommend Pirate, Shaman, or Warrior for anyone but the best players. Only the top 10 Legend players, so, you know, don't touch those decks. Please, don't touch those decks. I will not take any blame if you lose any ranks. But yeah, for real, guys, I want to just take a look at some of the best decks for ladder and go over them a bit more in depth. I've looked at some other tier lists, and not only do I disagree with the content of the tier lists, but I also disagree with just the way they did it. I think they don't really explain much. They just kind of are like, well, I believe that this deck is the best because it is strong and it should be nerfed. And that's kind of lame. I want to explain to you guys why these decks are good. I'm going to try to keep it a little bit short. I just recorded this entire thing. I just did this entire thing and it was like 55 minutes and I don't want to upload that long video. So I am going to try to keep it a bit shorter, but I will still go in depth. And I have one special skill for that, and that's how fast I talk. If you guys enjoy this video, please be sure to let me know in the comments so that I can do it once again. If you guys like these kind of lists, I will make sure to redo them. If you don't like it, well, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. But if you do like it, like and subscribe so that I know to do it again. It will help me out a lot. It makes me really happy. Get a dopamine rush every time. You know, like when the cute girl that you like texts you, and you're like, ah! That's the feeling I get when someone likes or subscribes to my channel. So if you want someone to feel like, ah, then you know what to do. You guys know what to do. Last thing but not least, I stream on Twitch 6 days a week. Twitch.tv/Luker_HS. That's LUKER_HS. Sellout. So please go watch me there. I am cute sometimes. Alright. Enjoy the video, guys. Let's jump right in. Alright, guys. So the first deck on the list today is obviously Guardian Animals Druid. I know that you all expected this. I mean, I'd be lying if I said anything except for this, right? The deck's broken. The deck can do a bunch of dumb stuff. I almost swore. I shouldn't swear if I want to get monetized. The deck does a lot of cool things. It can cheat mana. It can play broken cards early. It can Guardian Animals on turn 3. It can Kael'thas on turn 3 and play 3 10-mana spells. It can do whatever it wants. Honestly, Malfurion is just in charge of the game. So, yeah, be careful out there. It's a zoo, quite literally. I think Guardian Animals Druid is a relatively easy deck to pilot. There are a lot of intricacies, but the deck is pretty solid. As far as the list goes, the list I'm featuring is a pretty standard one that I got from my good pal Viper. Not the Grandmaster, the better one, the cuter one. If you're watching this video, I love you. I think there are a little bit of a discussion on what cards you can flex in and flex out. I think typically Wild Growth is core. I don't want to debate it. I know Viper is running 2 Wild Growths, hence the list that I'm showing. I did change one card from his list though. I took it as Living Dragon Breath. He was running this card as a tech card for Mage, but I wasn't really seeing much Mage. So the list that I'm showing is pretty much his list, except for minus Dragon Breath. In his eyes, he thinks that Iron Bark is less important than Crystal Power because Crystal Power is just better against aggro decks. It lets you heal, it lets you clear off minions, it lets you do whatever you want. Personally, I think Iron Bark might be a bit better, but I'm not really sure, so I'm just featuring his list. I haven't tested Druid that much, so I can't really speak on it. I think Iron Bark lets you go off of Kael'thas more, but in some ways it is worse against aggro, so it does make sense. It just kind of depends on what you're queuing into. Some people decided to run one or no Wild Growths. I think you should at least have one. If you really want to cut a Wild Growth, put in second Survival of the Fittest. This card's very strong. Lets you beat some of the slower decks on ladder. It wins the mirror, beats Priest, beats Warrior. So yeah, why not run 2? Honestly, the list that you run will pretty much come down to what you're facing off against, but I think this is a good core list, a good, just like staple to run for most metas. I think it's very possible that Druid's nerfed, so before you go and spend all your dust on this, just consider if you can afford to. If Druid is nerfed, it'll probably be Kael'thas, which means you won't be getting a dust refund, so do be careful with that. The general mulligans for the deck are pretty standard. You just look for ramp, look for mana cheat, depending on your hand, look for Kael'thas, and keep Guardian Animals. So that means you want to keep Lightning Bloom, Wild Growth, Overgrowth. If you have an insane hand with those cards, Kael'thas is fine to keep. And if you don't, probably don't keep it. Especially not in aggressive matchups. Against aggressive decks, cards like Gidra are very good. And still look for the ramp, because when you're playing 10 mana cards on your opponent's turn 4, you're going to win the game. It doesn't matter what the matchup is. Guardian Animals is a keep in every matchup though. This card is absolutely broken, so make sure to keep it. If you can play it on like turn 4 with like Coin, Lightning Bloom, do it, don't hesitate. The matchups for this deck are pretty straightforward. You do struggle against Priest. I would say this would maybe be your worst matchup currently, Highlander or Galakrond Priest. Your best matchups, though, are pretty much everything else. When you go to HS Replay, you'll see all the matchups are just green. It's all green. They're all favored. It's insane. How is that a thing? Druid should not exist. But it does, so play it while you can. This is the best deck right now for you to get ranks and to climb with, so please just take advantage of it and play it as much as you can, if you can afford to. This is definitely the best deck in the meta. I don't think anyone really disagrees except for Priest players, but Priest players just like to hate on fun, so play Druid, win games, report back to me. Alright, so the second deck on the list is one that I mentioned previously, and it's Priest. I think Galakrond Priest is probably a bit more consistent than Highlander Priest, but they're kind of interchangeable. The decks are both stupid. In my opinion, if your deck has Mindrender Lucia, it's probably broken and should probably be nerfed. I think that card needs to be taken out back, hit with a shovel, and buried. Just like... I can't remember the book name. Why can't I remember the book name? But Lenny, you know, look at the flowers. You gotta do it, man. Of Mice and Men, there you go, that one. I hope I'm right. If not, I'm gonna look really stupid. But Priest is stupid. Mindrender Lucia is stupid. It's unfun to play against. I know if you guys like playing Priest, you might hate me, comment, get all mad. But realistically, the deck is kind of broken. It invokes and generates infinite minions. It steals your cards. It plays your cards better than you can. You can heal your cards after they take them. It can take your hand and play your hand. That's not fair. Please stop. But yeah, jokes aside, I do think Priest is really strong right now. And it's arguably the second best deck in the game. It's one of, if not the only deck that consistently beats Druid, making it just a solid choice for ladder. The list that I'm featuring is a relatively standard Priest list. There are different ones. Some lists opt to go to a more dragon-heavy package. But this list is just relatively consistent all across the board. It has the broken cards like Mindrender Lucia. It also runs the Cabal Wave of Apathy package. This lets you take your opponent's threat if they ever generate one large minion. And this is particularly good against Druid. They'll play a Twilight Runner sometimes, maybe it's been buffed by Survival of the Fittest, and you can just yoink it, and it's yours now. I definitely recommend giving this deck a try. If you like Masochism or BDSM, it's probably your deck. If you don't like BDSM or Masochism, maybe play something else, something more interactive. But if you want to see your opponent bash their head into their keyboard, then this is the deck for you. A lot of players have been conceding to it on turn 1. You'll see clips on Twitter of players like Fino just insta-conceding because they just don't want to play against it. It's just not really worth it. Aside from that, the deck is relatively... I want to say it's easy to play. I think there are some harder parts to it. Knowing how to use your removal, when to use your removal, when to use each spell, and like what threats do you need to take from your opponent, or when to take your opponent's hand. I know I just said a lot, but all those can be very difficult things to do. But at a very base level, the deck is relatively easy to pilot. You will play your threats on curve, you will clear your opponent's board when they go too wide. If they go tall, you'll kill your opponent's minions. They make a big, juicy minion, my minion now. But you play the game for play the deck for a couple games, you'll figure it out. Don't hesitate to just try it and experiment and have fun with it. I'm not sure that's possible, but you know, if you can find fun in little things, then this one's for you. In terms of matchups, Galakrond Priest excels against Druid, and it also beats just a lot of the broken combo decks on ladder. I say broken, not like overpowered, but just kind of like they don't really function very well. A good example is OTK Mage, the Misaki Arcane Missiles deck. It's one of my favorite decks I've ever played, but you can't beat Priest. If they play Mindrender Lucia, you lose the game. They play Misaki or the Apprentices, and you insta-concede. It's game over. In order to win this matchup, you usually have to go off early or just tempo out your Misaki, and that's just not a good way to win with combo decks. So those matchups are very good. And finally, the last thing we'll be looking at is its bad matchups, and well, a lot of them are pretty even. I would say its worst matchup is probably Galakrond Warlock. This deck is very bad into Warlock. The Warlock, or at least if you're playing the good Warlock list without the Soul Fragments, you have Infinite Pressure, you have Alexstrasza, you have Burn, you have a fully invoked Gala for the weapon, you have Zephyrus, you have Dragon Queen Alex, you just have so much. Your opponent, the Priest doesn't have enough to stave off the pressure, and it's going to take a lot of good draws, good invokes, and a really, really, really well-timed Mindrender Lucia to win the game. So if you're running into a lot of Priests, I definitely recommend checking out Galakrond Warlock, which will be spoken about a bit more in depth later when it comes to its spot on the tier list. The next deck that I'll be taking a look at and discussing for you is Bomb Warrior. Sadly, I wish we got rid of this deck. I don't know why it's still a thing. But it is, and they got some pretty cool new tools, with Dr. Krasinov making the cut. Also, Lord Barov is just a solid legendary that lets you clear boards. I thought this card would make its way into more tempo-based Warrior shells, but I guess Bomb Warrior is just better, so here it is. I think that Bomb Warrior is a relatively well-rounded deck. It does a lot of things well. It beats aggro decks, it beats Highlander decks, and it beats like the crazy cycle-based combo decks like OTK Mage. Those decks either concede to the sheer control power that the warrior has, or they lose to the bombs. Highlander decks will have their Highlander cards such as Zephyrus turned off by the bombs. Well, when there's multiple bombs in the deck, rather. And the cycle-based decks will just draw them to the bombs and die. Dying's pretty good for any deck in Hearthstone, or pretty bad for any deck in Hearthstone. So yeah, this deck's pretty good. The list we're featuring comes from Bloodyface. I know that a lot of you may know Bloodyface as that one America's Grandmaster, but I genuinely believe that he might be the best player in the world currently, or at least like top 3. His decks are always good. The interesting things to note in his list are the upgrade, or a copy of upgrade. Upgrade allows you to make your wrench caliber bigger against slower decks, which means more bombs. It's pretty much a fireworks show at all times. And the upgrade also lets you draw more pirates with Ankar if you feel like you need to cycle a little bit more. Maybe you hit the green skin by mistake, or you hit 2 Sky Raiders, or whatever, Upgrade lets the Ankar perform better and lets you draw more. I'd be hesitant to play it on turn 1 though, but you do you, whatever you gotta do. Also, Zephyrus is in the deck, which is kind of weird, you might think, because it's not a Highlander deck, but Cutting Class draws a lot, Battle Rage draws a lot, Corsair Cash, Ankar draws a lot, so Zephyrus is active quite a bit. Sometimes you can do some really cheesy things where you manipulate your hand so it gives you Doomhammer, and you play Upgrade, and then Greenskin, and then Krasinov, and now you have a 5-attack Doomhammer, and you're just like bop, 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 and your opponent's crying in the corner like, stop, don't hit me, and it's pretty good. So I definitely give this deck a try. I think it's very solid. In terms of difficulty of play, I'd say it's on the harder side. I think a lot of the turns might be autopilot, but risky skip returns can be hard to pilot. As such, it takes a bit of practice. It might be the hardest deck on the tier list. I'd say 4.5, maybe a 5. But, with some practice, you'll probably figure it out. Alright, so for bad matchups, I think that typically Priest is relatively rough. Galakrond Priest has enough to heal out the bombs, and it can just kind of deal with your threats, and then some of them even run weapon removal, which makes it difficult. But aside from that, Libram Paladin is very hard to deal with. They can essentially generate infinite value with Librams. They have Lady Leandrin, they have healing, they have it all. You don't really get to play the game, so it's not like an unwinnable matchup by any means, but it is relatively rough, and it's one of the more difficult matchups for the deck, so if you are seeing a lot of Uther, then you might want to put the bombs away. But yeah, I think Bomber is a solid deck for ladder right now, arguably the 3rd best deck, so definitely try it out and let me know how it goes. Alright, so the last deck that I'm going to be talking about today is my personal favorite on the list. I think it might be 3rd best, not 4th, but a lot of people disagree with me, so I'm just going to keep it at 4th to keep the masses happy. And that is Galakrond Warlock. Before I go into depth with this one, I do want to say that originally I was going to have 5 decks, with Secret Rogue being in between Galakrond Warlock and Temple Warrior. But I thought about it, and while recording that part, I kind of realized that I don't think that deck's that good. I think it's like a fad, it's going to fade away after a couple days, so I decided keeping it to 4 would be just more accurate. But yeah, so Galakrond Warlock is my personal favorite if you watch my Twitch stream over on twitch.tv /Luker_HS, LUKER_HS. Yeah, if you've watched my stream, you've seen me play Galakrond Warlock in the past few days. I have a pretty high win rate in Higher Legend. I think the deck slaps. Personally, I'm a little biased. I think it beats every deck on this tier list except for Warrior, but most people would disagree. So, I don't want to be giving you guys biased information. I'm trying to give you as much of an outside perspective as I can. So, and I want to be accurate, Obviously, everyone thinks the deck they play beats everything. That's just kind of how it is. But I do think Galakrond Warlock is a solid choice for ladder right now, and I think a lot of people are sleeping on it, so definitely give it a shot. The list we're featuring is pretty standard. The list I originally had more Artificer, I hope I said that right, in the deck, but I cut it for Nether because there's a lot of Druids on ladder, and against Druid, you want to clear their board. You have enough removal to clear most things, but when they Ysera into Overflow and they have 6 minions or more, it's very hard to clear sometimes. So Nether tidies that up, it gets rid of the board. I think if you're seeing a lot of aggro, you could run more Arc, but typically this list is pretty solid. Just quickly, a lot of people ask me why I don't run the Soul Fragment package. I think that list is much better against the aggressive decks on ladder, but seeing as ladder is about 50% Druid and Priest, I think you need the Dragons to pressure your opponent out. This list is very good against those decks. You're about 50-50 against Druid, but you're insanely favored against Priest with this list, whereas I think the Soul Fragment list is actually unfavored against both of them, so, it's your choice. Whatever you're queuing into would be better. I'll briefly show each list over here, and by I'll show, I mean my editor will show because I have no talent. It's all her. But I think both those lists are good. I would definitely lean towards the Dragon list, though. In terms of the mulligan, it varies based on each matchup, but against aggressive decks, you want to look for things like Dark Skies, Plague of Flames, Cheap invokes, mostly just the 3-drop. Nether Breath, those are the key cards, I would say. You can also keep Torque Guide in just about every hand. Torque Guide is absolutely insane, and it helps like cheat your curve out. Torque Guide on 1 into tap, Torque Guide on 3 after tapping. There's just a lot of things you can do. It's really, really good. Against your Druid, I would also keep Dark Skies and Plague of Flames. I know it might seem a little counterintuitive, but being able to Dark Skies the 5/4 or Plague of Flames just a wide board is very important. Once you stave off their early pressure, you should be okay and able to just win the game with like a little bit of your minions push and phase damage. Also, in this matchup, keep your invokes. You want to just pressure them each turn if you're able to. And finally, for mulligans against slower decks, just keep your invokes, look to curve out and play your threats. It's important to just make sure you're pressuring your opponent each turn. Your deck does it very well. In the early game, make sure to tap every turn, unless you're overdrawing. And then in the late game, just look to use Galakrond and the hero power as much as you can to pressure your opponent. The matchups are, they're a little weird. You are about even against Druid, but you're very favored against Galakrond Priest. In fact, you are so favored with this list that the Priest should probably concede on turn 1. They can win if they get a really sick Mind Render Lucia, but you can play around it. I've seen some people playing Galakrond at the second they can on turn 7, and I'm not convinced that it's right. I think you should try to invoke every single turn, and then try to have a fully invoked Galakrond by 7 or 9, and then play it the second you can. But having a fully invoked Galakrond is such a huge swing, I think it's so important to make sure to invoke every turn. And then for bad matchups, Bomb Warrior is nearly unwinnable. Bomb Warrior just hits you in the head, man. It's horrible. The bombs mess you up, you can't tap. Their threats are huge, they can deal with your threats. It's just such a bad matchup. But another bad matchup is also Weapon Rogue. They just kind of hit you. Currently, this iteration of Warlock doesn't have any weapon removal, so the self-sharpening sword just kind of gets there. You die. No fun. No bueno. But yeah, and for ease of play, I do think Warlock is relatively hard. I would say it's maybe a 4 out of 5. Probably just a 4, though. Maybe 4.5, but probably 4. The deck, once you know how to play it inside and out, it's not that bad, but getting to the point of knowing how to play it inside and out is kind of a hard-fought battle. There's a lot of little intricacies you might not think of, especially Torque Guide interactions. So yeah, just keep playing it, you'll get there. I think this is my favorite deck. In fact, I'm probably going to do a deck guide breakdown type thing in the coming days, so be sure to subscribe to check that out when it's ready. Turn notifications on. But yeah, I think Galakrond Warlock is probably the 4th best ladder deck right now. Maybe the 3rd, it's kind of close. Definitely try it, let me know how it does for you guys. Alright guys, thank you for watching my first, tiered list or just best ladder decks video. It's a lot of fun to make, I actually really enjoyed it. I had to do 2 takes, the first one was, as I said, insanely too long and I want to make it more consumable. So hopefully I gave you guys enough information. If you guys feel like I could have went a bit more in depth, do let me know. I appreciate all feedback, as I said. I answer pretty much every comment as well. So yeah, just make sure to do that. These are the 4 decks that I currently think are the best for ladder. I know people might be thinking oh, where's Libram Paladin? Libram Paladin's so good on Access Replay. I think the deck kind of sucks. I think it's a tier 2 deck, don't get me wrong, but I do think it does not hold up to the stats that people are seeing. The stats are obviously some of the lower ranked players, but when you get to the higher rankings, you don't really see Libram Paladin ever. And when you do, it's usually someone who's baked playing in their bed and are just on their phone blessing the king's face. The deck doesn't really do well when you know how to play around everything, and you know when to be trading and when to be going face, so I do think that deck does not make the cut. It might be the 7th or 8th best deck for ladder. Anyways, try these decks out. All the codes will be in the description below. Don't hesitate to ask any questions. I plan on doing a Galakrond Warlock guide, as I said, but you can also come over to my Twitch stream, as I mentioned, on twitch.tv/LukerHS to ask me questions. I will answer literally anything. Even if you want to know my foot size, shoe size, I will tell you, no problems. Especially if it's for a kink, then I'll definitely tell you. Once again, guys, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Every like and subscription is one prayer to Yogg Saron, and it'll bless you with better RNG. I know I need it. You probably do too, so make sure to like and subscribe. I think that's it, guys. I'm looking forward to seeing you again. I look forward to your feedback. Best of luck on the ladder. Make sure to hit Legend. Best time is now. No one knows what's going on. Everyone's playing fun decks. Take these best decks, abuse them. You will hit Legend. I promise you. Peace out, Cub Scouts. Make sure to stay hydrated, keep your back straight, and just be happy. Do your best to be happy. Put a smile on your face. It'll put a smile on other people's faces, too. Hope to see you guys soon. And until next time. Ciao, guys.